Hey guys, DJ here with GameTime Michigan, and today this is going to be the first official video anyways, in a new series that I'm putting out. It's going to be a new collector series of videos, and we're going to be talking about just useful information and things like that for newer collectors. I've been in the industry for 25 years now, over 25 years, and it's just a way for me to kind of share some of my, the wealth of knowledge that I have on things that maybe new collectors, don't know. So today the topic of the video is going to be how to properly care for and store your cards. Got my handy dandy note sheet with me, and we got a lot to get through. So let's get rolling. All right, so first off, no matter what you're collecting, right, for the purpose of this video today, we're going to talk about collecting TCG cards, but really most of this information will apply to, collecting various things, right? It's all going to be the same kind of standards as far as like storing and caring for whatever you do collect. But for purposes of today's video, we're going to talk about TCG cards. In front of me, I have a Pokemon card, just normal rare Deoxys from 2015, nothing special. And just depending on what game you collect, your cards are going to have different levels of quality to them. Some of them, you'll be able to bend without putting any damage to them. Like Pokemon is pretty firm with cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic is really good. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is one of the ones where you don't want to bend your cards in half because you will put a crease in them. They are thinner cards. But other games, you can be fine. Again, I would never suggest you just start bending a card for the heck of it. But all trading cards do, they're made out of cardboard. They have some leeway, right? You don't have to be super paranoid with everything when you handle them. That being said, there is proper and improper ways to handle just raw cards without any sleeves on them. So we'll start there. In general, when you're holding a card, you want to be light on the grip with it. If possible, kind of let it sit on your palm. When it's unsleeved, you want to be careful with the corners, because if you're putting pressure on the corners, your corners are spots where they're easier. It'll have more give, right, than if you're holding it by the sides. But yeah, you don't want to really be holding it like this. And if you are, you don't want to put too much pressure on it because you will damage your corners. As far as if it's an unsleeved card and it is sitting on the table, you do want to be careful how you pick that card up, because just dragging, imagine this is the table, right? Dragging it across the table, either face up or face down, you're going to scratch the card. And the back will be a little bit harder to scratch, but holofoil cards are really easy to scratch. So if this is like face down on the table and you like drag it to the edge of the table to pick it up, you've probably scratched this card and you've done damage to it. And that's not what you want to do. I mean, this is a cheap card, right? But let's pretend this was a $500 card. You don't want to pick up that card that way, right? Okay, so let's start talking about the different ways you can store your cards. Got a bunch of different ways here. There's tons of pros and cons to all of them. So we'll cover everything, and I'm going to cover both single cards, graded cards, and then just actual sealed product, right? Unopened product. And then I'll just kind of go over my my personal preferences and how I personally like to store my cards, right? And we'll get into from the beginning, some of these topics won't apply to you, just because you might have a small collection. Your collection might not be super valuable from the beginning, but I want to cover everything, just because that's important to cover. Like, as your collection grows, as your value gets bigger and bigger, you do want to change the way you store and protect these items, right? So I want to cover that in this video today as well. So we'll start off the excuse me, the way that basically everybody stores a card, no matter how you're storing it. Most cards will end up in a sleeve of some sort, right? This, around here at least, they've been called penny sleeves for forever. I think that's pretty much a universal term. I prefer penny sleeves. So take one out, right? And it's a soft sleeve, right? you don't want this to be the only way you store your cards, at least if it's a valuable card. If it's, like a common or an uncommon, or maybe if we're talking Pokemon, like a reverse holo common, it just being in a penny sleeve and in a box or something is fine. But I think this is a good place to start on putting your protecting your cards, right? So it's simple. Card goes in sleeve. And so there's different kinds of penny sleeves. So I just prefer these normal. I get them from my suppliers. These normal Ultra Pro card sleeves. Some people like perfect fit. Some people like the kind where it kind of folds over and tucks in. So the kind that folds over and tucks in, there's an extra piece of plastic over the part of the card, and so if you have a big stack of cards all pressing on top of each other, you can damage your cards long term by doing that. So I don't like those kind of sleeves. And then as far as the perfect fits, I do not like perfect fits, and my issue with the perfect fits are they fit very snugly on the card, right? So it is possible that going in or out of the sleeve, you can damage your card. In addition, when it's in the sleeve, because they're perfect fit, you have no space, right, in between the top of the sleeve and the top of the card. So if I take my card and it's upside down and it touches any surface, right, the lid of a box or a table, the top of the card itself is touching is touching that, and it can damage that surface on the top, right? Whereas like normal penny sleeve, there's, as you can see, there's some there's some extra room there to where if it does touch something, it's the penny sleeve touching it. So I don't like the perfect fits personally, but people do use them, and then I don't like the ones that kind of fold over and the top folds in too. So that kind of covers it for penny sleeves. And now there's a bunch of different ways you can store from here. We'll go over top loaders. So I like top loaders, and what a top loader is, let me show you some boxes here. I got all my supplies on the side. This is a box of top loaders. You get 25 of them. They're a couple of bucks. And this is what an individual top loader looks like for those that don't know. They're thin. They make a bunch of different sizes. So like if you're a sports card collector and you have like jersey cards, you can get thicker ones. But for the purposes of this video, these are just the thin ones that hold trading cards. So the way I like to store my cards personally, because I don't move my cards around very much, I have card and penny sleeve, goes in a top loader, goes in a box, and then it just kind of sits in the box. So we'll get, and then just if you do. So I've seen a lot of people use top loaders incorrectly. There is a right way and a wrong way to use a top loader. So if you are a top loader person, sliding it into the top, it's pretty easy. You get the card in, right? Oh, let me go in this way. So you get it in the top loader, and then you don't really want to put pressure on the card, right? You can either lightly push it down if you're just touching the plastic, or if it gets stuck, you can just kind of tap it against your finger here. And so the card is still, you're never touching the card, damaging it, and it slides it down. And then there's a way to get cards out of a top loader too, or rather there's a wrong way to get cards out of a top loader. So I've seen people try to take cards out of top loaders. I've seen them do this, and I've seen it where like the card has flown out of the top loader and flown on the ground. You know what happens, right? You're damaging your card a lot. So you don't want to do it that way. I don't like doing it that way. The way I like to get my cards out of a top loader is I like to open up the top loader a little bit with my finger and just slide it in, and it slides right out. And then you get the card out. And honestly, for the most part, once your card is in a top loader, you really shouldn't be taking it out of that top loader very much, right? If you're taking it out to inspect its condition, maybe you're considering to send it off to get graded, or you're trading it and somebody wants to like look at the condition of it, then maybe take it out. But it shouldn't be going in and out of a top loader, several times. It basically should be staying in the top loader. And again, once you've got it out, you want to get it back in, you slot it in, just kind of do some tapping, and it'll find its way back in there. And you don't damage the card that way at all. So this is the way I like to, if I don't have cards in binders, which I personally don't store a lot of my cards in binders. I don't look at my cards very much. So my method of storing my cards are, my more valuable cards at least, they go in the penny sleeve in the top loader. And I like these Elite Trainer boxes personally, but you can have any box that fits cards. But for the Elite Trainer boxes, conveniently, and I'll show you, I've got a full example over here, but these will hold top-loaded cards perfectly. and you fit in the lid. They don't take up much space. They go in the safe, and you're good to go. If you're looking at your cards a lot, you might want to consider a binder. This is just how I do things. We'll come back to the Elite Trainer boxes in a second. So we covered the top loader. I want to cover these two. These are snap tights. People store their cards in snap tights. So this is a sliding. This is a double stack box. But when you open it up, this top slides off, and you can put cards in it. It slides back in. And then these are a snap shut. So there's a little, you can kind of see the locking mechanism, and it's got, the hinge. And you open up your cards. I see people store cards in this. I don't like these at all. They don't hold sleeved cards. There's a little bit of wiggle room, and you can see, like, as I turn it back and forth, these cards are moving around. That can be damaging the cards, right? And just something, a little motion like this probably won't damage them. But if I'm carrying it around or moving it, you hear the jiggle, right? That is damaging your corners and edges every time you do that. Plus, if I pick it up wrong, it just opens up and the cards fall everywhere. So I personally don't store my cards in these, but people do, and it's something you can do. So it's something to consider. Like I said, the big con with this is you just can't have cards with sleeves in it. And the cards are loose; they jiggle around. You're damaging your card when they sit in here, honestly. So these are two ways to store. I'm not a fan of these. All right. So move some stuff around here. Come back to these later. Now we can get into the binders. Most people, at least if you have like a trade binder, if you're taking your cards out to trade, or you're doing full sets, or you like to look at your cards or move your cards around a lot, the best option for you is going to be a binder, right? There's several different kinds of binders, and let's discuss the pros and cons of each. So before I go into the one that I personally like and use, and this is the one that I use for all my cards at my store here, we'll talk about the ones that I hate. So if you were around cards when you were a kid, or like 20 years ago or whatever, you will remember a time where the only binders that were available to store cards in were the 3-ring metal binders with the 9 pocket pages, right? That Ultra Pro sold or whatever. And then, you just use like a school binder. You put them in and you'd put the cards in the sleeves. And the problem with those metal binders is no matter how you store your cards, just moving them around, flipping the pages, your metal rings will put damage on your cards. And you'll see this. You probably have seen one of these before if you're a collector. You've probably seen it before, where you see a card that looks really, really good, right? And then there's like a little notch or a crease, like on the first third of the card, the second third of the card are dead middle. And cards that get those, and they go like a 1/4 of an inch in, right? And that's it. Those indents on the cards, they come from the metal rings of a 3-ring binder. And that's just from like the way they shut the binder, flipping the pages, right? If the metal's resting against it, it will indent it. And so you see a lot, I see a lot of cards that, and I'm sure a lot of people do, otherwise good condition cards, they've got the little dings. And, if you have a common card, you're not really hurting the value on that because it's really not worth anything anyways, right? But if you go back in time and you've got like a binder full of base set for Pokemon, like a base set Charizard, and this several $100 card, and it looks really, really good condition outside of it's got this notch, that notch is going to cost you a couple $100 on just that card alone. Plus, just almost any way you can store the binder, there will be some pressure on the cards with the metal, like whether it's the bottom pages or the top pages, and there's just not a good way to do it. So I don't like those binders personally, and I would never store cards in them. At least not any valuable cards, right? Maybe if you're storing commons, but there's a more economical and space-efficient way to store commons, and I'll get to that in a second. So back to the binder topic. There's a couple of other binders. And this binder specifically is a... oops, I got it upside down. This binder is a zippered padded binder. There are other padded and non-padded binders, and there are non-zippered binders too that have no metal in them, right? This has no metal. You'll see the common one that I see people come in with is they've got the little elastic strap instead of a zipper, right? Personally, I don't like those for storage, just depending on how you're storing cards. But if you're carrying them around, my issues with the elastic band ones is you can have, depending on how many cards you have and how thick your binder is, that elastic band can put some, indent on all your cards that are on this third row here, right? So I don't like the elastic band there. Plus, if you're moving your cards around, a card can fall out, right? And I don't think that's super likely, but it's a possibility to happen. I don't like that. The nice thing with these padded zippered ones is it's zippered, right? I can turn it upside down. I can kind of do whatever I want with it. The cards aren't falling out as long as it's zipped, right? And because it's padded, even though I don't want to drop the binder, it's got a little bit of a cushion just in case I do. And so as you can see, let me see if I can get a close-up here. You can see there's no metal in the binder. This one is a Dex one specifically, but there's several different brands. You can kind of go with whatever. This is a 12-pocket page. They make 9 and 4 pockets too. They even go a little bit bigger. I think you can get a 16-pocket. But there's no metal involved. There's no way you can kind of put pressure on the sides of the cards. Whereas like if this was a metal ring right here, you could, depending on how you fold the page or flip the page, you could be damaging your card here. You could be damaging it here, damaging it there, right? So I personally, if you're storing, I use these for my, like the cards that are worth something but don't fit in the showcases at my store here. Like double rares or gallery cards, things like that. And then on the personal side of things, I use them to store, whenever I do a full set, I like to use these to store full sets. And then I zip it up. I let it sit, and you know, like I said, on my personal side of things, like I know what I have, so it's not like I'm pulling it out to look at every day. So this just goes in the closet or wherever else and just kind of sits there once I'm done with it. If you do insist on storing your cards in a metal binder, the best way to store these kind of binders is going to be, so if you have your binder like this, if it's really thick, you will have a little bit of downward pressure on like your bottom, your bottom cards here, which isn't it's probably not going to hurt them, but it's not the best thing, right? The rings are what really get you. So if you have one of the 3-ring binders and you store your cards, the best way to do it is you don't want any pressure on your metal rings, right? So you want to stand it up. It needs to be standing like an A-frame, to where your pages are hanging down, so there's no pressure from the metal on the cards, right? When they're hanging free and the cards are hanging free, there's no way for them to take any damage. So that, if you're storing in a binder, I would do that. And I understand, like, Pokemon, it's a social thing. People like to show off their collections and things like that. So that's where the binders really come in handy. Because I can be comfortable taking the binder out of my house and, taking it to, like, a card store or taking it over to a friend's house and flipping page by page and showing them kind of what I've got, right? Not worry about the cards getting damaged. Whereas if it's in, like, one of these little boxes or something, it moving around, you're going to degrade the condition on your cards. And even if your cards aren't worth a ton right now, who knows what the world holds for trading cards in 10 or 20 or 30 years, right? Maybe a $5 card today is a $500 card in a decade from now. And you want to make sure you have a good condition one. You want to take good care of your cards. Just because it's, for the most part, they're appreciating assets, and you need to kind of treat them as such, right? So we covered the binder. Let me put my binder down here. Okay. And then, so my personal way I like to store my cards. People use binders. I don't use binders for my more valuable cards just because I have space limitations. And once I have my cards, they go in a spreadsheet, they go in a box, and if I don't pull them out to look at them. If I want to look at them, or if I'm curious what I have, I look at my spreadsheet. So I'm not pulling out my collection and looking at it. I probably look at my personal collection maybe once a quarter just to kind of do inventory and make sure everything is where it should be, and that's about it. Sometimes even less than that. Sometimes I only look at it like maybe twice a year. But the way I store things personally, my more expensive ones, they go in these ETB boxes, which perfect width. And here, let me show you. So this is well, outside of the one card I had put in the Pokemon one. This is an empty one, right? This is, what's in this box? So this is a box with penny sleeve cards. You can see there's a little bit of wiggle room there, right? You can kind of get my finger in. It can hold a lot of cards. I see a lot of people use these to store just random commons like bulk cards or reverse hollows, and that's fine too. The thing with these is if they're moving around a lot, when there's the room, you can hear the cards, right? Kind of sliding around, which isn't great, but as long as they're sleeved, it's not too bad, right? The real genius from this all comes with top-loaded cards. And you can see this is a whole box. This is a whole box of top loads. and I can't really get my finger in here. Like it's about the perfect width, and with them standing up, it's the perfect height for the top as well, so you're not going to damage your cards. So I like to store my top-loaded cards, my more valuable cards that aren't graded. They go in a top loader, and they go in one of these. The lid goes on it. I'll take a little Post-it note. I'll put a label on, what part of my collection is in this box, and then it gets set aside. And I'll come back to what I do with mine later. So that's kind of, I like the ETBs to store cards personally, and that's just, for me it works because I'm not moving my cards around and looking at them a ton, right? So let me see my notes here, make sure. Another thing, and I'll come back to this when we get to the sealed storage part of the video, but I did want to include this here a little bit too, is you'll have people store cards in Tupperware storage containers. I don't like that for several reasons. The cards are never going to fit perfectly in there. They're going to wiggle around just like those hard plastic cases, right? And then in addition to that, your Tupperware containers, and I'll talk about this more when I get to the sealed side, they're not UV resistant. And anytime those cards are going to see light through like one of those Tupperware containers, it will damage them. It will degrade the color of the card, which it won't be noticeable in 1 or 2 days, but in 5 years, if it catches sun every day, you'll see. Another popular way to store cards, if you've been around the hobby at all or have friends that have, you know what one of these is. This is a 800 count cardboard box. So they make them in all different sizes. You've got these, you've got like 600 counts, you've got 100 counts, you've got the double row, triple row, 4 row, 5 row card houses. These are great for bulk cards and for cards that are of low value. As long as you're not, this is something where you put the cards in here, you close it up once it's full, and you put it somewhere. You're not carrying this around day in and day out everywhere. The cards in here will get damaged if you move these around too much, right? So this is like a set it and forget it kind of thing if you're putting cards in here. Or it's great for bulk or very low-end cards, right? Like maybe you have a stack of reverse hollows from a set of Pokemon or something like that, right? Bulk rares from Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic, perfect for here. Put it in a penny sleeve, put it in here, you are good to go. So that covers that. And then I did want to cover, this is just general topic kind of thing. No matter how you store your cards, depending on where you're at in the world, you probably want to include a desiccant with them. And what that does, a desiccant just kind of absorbs moisture from the air. Like, I'm in Michigan, my store's in Michigan. We have dry as well as wet weather, right? So over time here, if you have holofoils that just kind of sit out for 5, 10, 20 years, your holofoils are going to get U-shaped. They're going to get they're going to bend from the moisture in the air, going from wet to dry to wet to dry to wet to dry, right? Like if you live in a very dry area year round, like if you're in Vegas or you're in Arizona, something like that, you really won't have to worry about that too much. But a place like where I am, or any time where like the season, anywhere where like you have very different seasons, like we get a winter with a lot of snow, we get warm summer sometimes. So those are that it's dry. We get a lot of humidity in our air. So we need to you want to combat that, right? You need to fight against that, and that's like the desiccant. And I don't have a pack here to show, or actually I do have a pack here to show you. But that's exactly where you want one of those with. However you choose to store your sealed cards or your single cards. Let me pull one out here. Give me a second. Yep. And so this is it says like activated carbon, do not eat. This is a desiccant, right? And it absorbs the moisture from the air. So these you want for the price that you'll pay for them. They'll pay back 100-fold. They are very good. You need one wherever you put your cards. Okay, now we can start talking about graded cards. So as you like grow as a collector, maybe at first you find your one niche and you target that and kind of go with it. Most collectors, as they grow, they start to acquire graded cards at some point. Even if they're not big graded, card collectors, they'll get at least a few that are like really cool, right? Because PSA 10s of cards, at least in Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and Magic, there's not a whole lot of PSA 10s of certain cards, and they're always valued a lot higher than just either a raw card or like a PSA 9 or a PSA 8, right? So those are your chase ones. So you'll have a lot of people where, say they want to collect Paldea Evolved Magikarp, for example. Raw, it's like, what, 110 right now? PSA 10 is like $600 or $650. So there's a huge price difference. And there's a lot less out there, right? So people, it's like a status thing, kind of, where the PSA 10s specifically, usually hold value pretty well and appreciate decently well. So you'll have people that like to collect, that collect them for that. You'll have people that just like to collect slabs because it's cool, right? If you see something has like a population of 30 and you own one of those 30 in the world, that's pretty cool. So, properly storing your PSA slabs. I think no matter what you have, you've got to have some sort of sleeve on it, right? It's a graded card sleeve. You can't have your slab raw. Some people they get the rubber guards for the really expensive slabs and they use them. Personally, I am a fan of the rubber guards, the bumper guards, just to help protect the slabs, like if we're talking higher end slabs. But just for your normal everyday slabs, that's like maybe $50 to $500. I don't think it's necessary unless you like to move your slabs around a lot and show them off. Maybe you're clumsy and drop them. That rubber bumper guard is like a cell phone cover or cell phone case. It'll protect your slab from damaging or breaking when you're moving it, like if you do drop it or when it's just getting moved in general, right? Because you don't want that to happen. You don't want it to break. You don't want to damage it. A damaged slab is very, very bad. You lose a lot of value from that. And then you have to waste the time trying to resubmit it and get it fixed. You have to hope the damage didn't destroy the card on the inside. A bunch of different things. So you want to take really good care of your slabs. As far as they should at least be, this is equivalent to like a penny sleeve for a raw card, right? It should at least be in one of these. What else do I have here? And then for higher end slabs, especially if you're talking about transporting them or things like that, there's several different options. And this is a pretty strong option that I see a lot of people use. I don't mind it either. This is a very, very hard plastic case. There are locks on it. You've got 2 holes on this one to put actual locks in, right? Some of them have like locks on front with keys. They come in all different sizes. They're not super expensive. I think this one, I forget how many cards this one holds. This one probably holds like 100 graded cards, and I think this was like $80. Smaller cases that hold less cards are going to be less. So the most important things you're looking for in these is you want it to be very hard plastic. You want it to be able to take a beating, right? So before you put cards in it, kick it around some, give it a couple of punches, see how it feels, make sure it's hard plastic. And then you want your latches to be good, and you want a way to have like a lock to it, right? And you want to make it so that like somebody can't just break into it super easy, right? If you're walking around with it, some of them have combination locks too. So like if this is something you're taking out to show people, make sure you have a lock on it yourself to unlock it so somebody can't get in there on you. But this one, I'll show you what the inside looks like. It's just got 2 latches. I don't have it locked because it's just me here right now. And it holds slabs. So when you're looking for just like pretty firm, like the foam, this is all padded. So like even if I dropped it, the slabs, not that I want to drop this with all these slabs in it, but it would protect them. So these are good for storing slabbed cards in. At least if you plan on taking your slab cards out to move around. There are other boxes that store slabbed cards, but I would only recommend those if, they make like these cardboard boxes. They call them a cardboard shoebox. Those store slab cards. I've got a couple in the store or over here somewhere. But those are only good if you're just kind of like keeping your slabs around and not moving them, right? If you're moving them around a lot, you want one of these because the slabs, I can shake it. The only thing you hear bouncing around in here is the desiccant. The slabs aren't moving at all. So that's kind of what you want. It protects the slabs very, very well. One other thing, I must have dropped them, but I had semi-rigid. Oh, here they are. So if you're the kind of person that likes to submit cards, you know what one of these are. These are semi-rigids. So card goes in a penny sleeve, goes in here, you send it off to get graded, basically, right? I don't like these for storing cards at all. I just wanted to cover that topic. I see some people store cards in these. There's no protection whatsoever. It's super flimsy. I don't like it. Not a fan to store them. Alrighty, so now some general things about cards too, right? So we've covered graded and we've covered singles. I'm going to dive into sealed here in a second, but I did want to touch base with this too. So the sunlight, just like moisture is an enemy to your cards. The sunlight is an enemy too. The sunlight will wash out your colors. It will damage your cards. You want protection from your cards. You want to be able to protect your cards from the sunlight. So I personally like my cards in boxes where the sunlight can't get to them. If you're one of those people that like to display your cards out, have them like slotted down in a display case, if you like the magnetic snap tights, I hate the snap tights because they can damage your cards. I suggest against those. If you want to display your cards, find some other way that doesn't use those magnetic snap tights or snap shuts or whatever they're called. I don't like them. They will damage your cards. But if you are displaying them, make sure that they are out of direct sunlight all 24 hours out of the day. They can't be hit by the sun at all if you want to display them. So like I do know people that have converted part of their basements to where like they'll have displays out for their different hobbies like Pokemon or sports or whatever. Something like that. As long as there's no windows in your basement, that should be fine. As for the sunlight, right now basement can have moisture issues too, or more so than like first floor or second floor of a house. So you have to deal with those. But as far as sunlight, your cards absolutely, and this goes for sealed products as well. It absolutely has to stay out of sunlight. It will damage your cards. It will wash out the colors. It will lower the value in them a lot. One of the most famous examples of they call it like sun bleaching. The one of the most famous examples of colors being washed out is there is a magazine Mew, a Koro Mew, and it's a psychic Pokemon, so it's a purple card, right? You can find several online that have recently sold. People like to deliberately wash out the colors on this card, and when they're washed out, when they're hit by sunlight, right? If you just kind of leave it out for 6 months or a year, you're going to wash out your colors. It becomes a very blue card. It looks very different. So if you're interested to see kind of like what the effects of the sun bleaching can do to the cards, that's a good example to look up. The Koro Japanese Mew. And now we're going to get on to sealed storage, and this is the more important part of the video. People that are, once you get into sealed product collecting in general, unless you have really high-end singles, your sealed products are going to have more value and be worth more than your singles overall, right? So this is where you want to take really good, really good stock of it, and you want to store them very correctly, right? Because you go out and buy a case of Pokemon, you're spending, what, $600, $700? You don't want to throw that away. So you want to make sure your cards stay in very, very good condition. The boxes, right? The sealed case if you decide to leave it as a case. And that's one thing that we can talk about too, because I know that's been a little bit of a topic I see online. People are like, well, if I buy a case of 6 boxes, there's no difference between me opening it up and selling the boxes separately and me keeping the case sealed. And that's absolutely incorrect. Sealed cases are much more rare than sealed boxes. Sure, a set that came out 6 months ago, a sealed case, will have about the same price as, the boxes individually, right? But if you go back 10, 15, 20 years, good Pokemon example. How many sealed cases of Jungle or Fossil are even in existence? And how much are those worth? Would you just are they just valued at 6 individual boxes? Not a chance. They are worth a lot more. So in general, your sealed cases, they're rarer. They will retain value better. They will be worth more than the boxes individually. So I'm very against opening a sealed case. If you're buying it for investment, if you're going to keep the booster box sealed anyways, keep the whole case sealed. Because I know people that they'll buy a case, they'll open it up, take one box out and just like use that as a display to display like, hey, look, I got this, and then they'll keep the other 5 in the sealed case. Like, don't do that. Keep the whole case sealed. If you want to display an individual booster box that badly, go out and buy a 7th booster box. Keep your case sealed. As far as actual storage goes, if you're storing your sealed cases, there's a few things you need to do. I've got, let me find there we go. I've got a nice little rack back here, a shelving unit. This is my nice one back here. The other two are a little bit lower end, but you need a high-end shelving unit. It's got to be sturdy metal. It has to be able to support weight, right? You need like an actual flat level for each shelf. It can't be wired. If you have it wired, the wiring will, the wired shelves will put damage on your boxes. So you can't have it wired. It's got to be a flat shelf. Your bottom shelf, you probably want, in an ideal world, you want it 2 feet off the floor at least, especially if these are going in your basement. You want to be able to avoid flooding. You don't want water to get to them. It might not be possible to have a 4-shelf unit with one, the bottom shelf 2 feet off the floor, but you don't want it near the floor, right? You want to keep it as far off the floor as possible because you don't want water to get to your cards. Water damages everything, right? Whether it's a sealed box, whether it's a single card, it will damage it. So the heavy duty shelves, you want those will last. They'll be good. You do want it off the ground to avoid the water. Sealed products is the same with singles. You want it to avoid the sunlight. It's got to be in a spot where even if it's a case, right, a sealed case, you don't want those to really get hit by the sunlight. Sunlight washes things out. I mean, a sealed case isn't terrible if it's washed out, but the booster boxes, if your booster box just starts fading in color because it's getting hit by the sun day in and day out because you got it on like your gaming desk at home or something, that's really bad. You don't want your sealed product. You need to keep it out of the sun. And speaking of that, if you do choose to display your boxes, I don't like just leaving the boxes out individually. I prefer these are like hard acrylic display box. Whoops. These ones are for Pokemon specifically. They make them for everything, all the different games. I saw these here in my store. I'll pull one out. Whoops. Pull one out and show you what I'm talking about here. Tore my plastic some. Get this out. So this is it's a hard acrylic display box. You can really kind of knock it without doing any damage to it. It's got a magnetic snap shut top. And then there's a little cleaning cloth, but the cleaning cloth doesn't matter. These ones from Ultra Pro specifically, and I'm sure other ones have them too, but this is just the one that I have in front of me. This does provide some amount of UV protection, but again, it's not 100%. It's not enough. You don't want this to be sitting out and getting hit by the sun, every day for years and years and years, right? You spent all the money on your box. You want to make sure you want to keep it in good condition. You do. So let me put this back in here. In addition to all that, you want a dry environment. Like I said, with the singles, desiccant, that's important. Cardboard absorbs moisture from the air, whether it's a sealed box, a sealed case, or a single individual card, right? So you just want to try to keep your cards in as dry of an environment as possible. You don't want them to get damaged. And because the worst, one of the worst things that can happen is you buy your cards, you take really good care of them, you hang on to them for like 10 or 15 or 20 years. The prices are now like 50 times what they were when you bought them. You're all happy. You go down to check on them, or you pull them out to go to check on them, and you see that they're curved, or they've got damage on them, or they're sun faded. Then it's like, oh crap. So you have to you want to protect yourself from that. And as far as storing the sealed product too, if you're storing cases or putting them in boxes, make sure you label your boxes. There's a couple of different ways to label them. I just take Sharpie and I write Sharpie on mine. People use sticky notes. The thing with sticky notes is sometimes they fall off over time, but depending on what kind of how you're storing things, if it's just like a sealed case from like a box of Pokemon, it'll say what it is on it, right? Or like something like that. You really only need to label it if you're mix and matching. I personally like to track my product, that, you know, my collection that I get. I'm a nerd, so I have spreadsheets of things. You know, I'll keep track like what I paid for it, what day I got it, just so that I know, right? So I know what my cost basis is and how long I've been holding it. And just like collecting, like I talked about in my other video for like people new to collecting, you want to have a plan when you start this, because it doesn't matter how you collect. You want to have a game plan for everything. You don't want to like get something and then wonder why or what you're going to do with it. You want to have the plan for it first before you get it. So me in general, I like my plans. I like to hold my stuff for a little bit. So it's not like I'm getting anything to quick sell or anything like that. So I want to be able to take good care of it. I want to store it correctly. Yeah, all the reasons above, the sunlight, all that, I don't like the display cases personally, but some people use them. And like I said, if you do, just make sure it's not near sun. Okay, now we can get to a little bit more the advanced side of the things, right? When you've got a collection that's a couple $100 or maybe $1,000 or $2, you don't need to worry about this. We're going to talk about security methods, right? Ways to secure your cards here. But as your collection grows and gets bigger, that gets to be an issue, and it gets to be pretty important. Obviously, like once you reach a certain point, security cameras and all that's kind of important, depending on how and where you store your cards. I've seen people use storage units. If you're using a storage unit, you want to make sure it's like inside a building, that they need to get into the building first and then like get to your unit after that. You just kind of don't want it to be like sitting in a shed somewhere. I prefer to store my valuable cards. My valuable cards don't even stay at my house with me. I have safety deposit boxes at banks. I keep them in there, and that way I don't have to worry about anything. But if you do want to keep your cards at your house, you know, because you want to look at them or trade them, or maybe your collection isn't big, or you know, for whatever reason, right? There's a couple of ways to do it very safely. So you absolutely should have safes in your house, and you should store your valuable cards in your safes, right, with a desiccant. But the size of your safe should depend on what kind of collection you have, right? You don't need a $10,000 gun safe if you have $500 worth of cards in your collection, right? If you have like $50,000 worth of cards in your collection, it's time to consider the gun safe, or it's time to consider storing it in another more secure facility, right? And this is a little bit, how do I say this? This is a little bit far on from the collection. Like if you're a newer collector, you won't have to worry about this for a minute, but it's kind of nice to have an idea or a plan, right? And as far as your safes, almost any safe you can buy today, there's they'll come with mounting kits. You can mount them to the floor, right? Make sure they're in good hidden spots. I know people that have underfloor safes, or like you can lift their floorboard up and their safes under that. Things like that, just ways to protect your cards. The important thing with the safes too is they will, if you get the right safe at least, you'll want it to be able to withstand fire, right? So let's say there's an electrical fire at your house or it burns down or something. You don't want to just lose everything. So you want to be able to protect what you can there. So that's where the safes kind of come in handy. Plus, like if there's theft when you're at home, it's easier to pick up like a 100 or 200 pound safe and carry it out if you can't crack the combination than if you've got like a gun safe. Nobody is walking a gun safe out of a house before the police get there. It's just not going to happen. So I like the gun safes. They give a lot of room. You can store a lot there, and they're pretty secure. Like you're not moving a gun safe out of a house once it's in, right? At least not if you're a criminal. So all that is kind of it comes out to be said too. Like it'll depend on kind of where you're at in your life. If you're renting an apartment, you're not going to have a gun safe in there, right? But you can have a safe of some sort in there. Bolt it to the floor, put it in your closet, toss some clothes over it, something like that. You're good enough to go at least, right? And And then yeah, if you have your own house, or you own a house, then you can kind of look at better security options, right? Like you can have the cameras. Obviously, you want an alarm system, and then different kinds of safes. My personal advice would be, I wouldn't want all my eggs in one basket, so I would not want all my cards in one safe. If I had cards, if you have cards at your house, I would want a couple of different safes for them in different spots of the house, so that even if somebody can get into one, you're not going to lose everything, right? It's all about just kind of creating redundancy for yourself once you get to that level of a collection. Looking over my notes, I think that really covers everything. One more thing I didn't mention. We're going to talk about the Tupperware. I don't like Tupperware plastic storage for sealed products. Like I've seen some people put like a booster box inside a Tupperware container. There's no UV protection. You can't protect it from the sunlight. So I don't like that. It's not going to be the perfect size. So it's the same thing with the card. Your box is going to kind of jiggle around. And especially once you get to the higher end boxes, maybe if it's like a $100 or $200 or $500 box, it's whatever. But when you start getting to the higher end boxes, your condition is really going to matter, right? So it's important just to make sure they stay in good condition, take care of them. The Tupperware too, for the most part, it's probably not hard enough to where if you drop it, it'll break or crush, or it'll damage things, right? But I think that about covers everything I wanted to talk about today. Again, important stuff. Just take good care of your cards, and have fun. The thing about collecting, it's fun. You want to have fun doing it, right? It's like cards nowadays, they're being treated like art pieces. So just treat your collection well, have fun collecting. It's a journey that it never stops, right? You kind of keep going. And even if you're just starting today, or you just started recently and don't have much, and you have like this whole laundry list of like cards that you want, just work towards it. Get a little bit every day. I mean, I've got some people that come into the store, they have massive collections, but they built that up over like 5, 10, 15 years of collecting, right? You don't start with everything on day one, and that's part of the fun and joy of it. It's about the journey, and that's the most enjoyable part of it, is just kind of the journey of collecting. And that covers it for the how to properly care for and store your cards. If you guys liked the video, if you have any thoughts, if you think there's something I missed or want to discuss with me, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below. This video is like 50 minutes long, so I don't expect many people to watch the whole thing, but if you got this far, thanks for watching. If you're in the Michigan area, come check out my store, GameTime Michigan. We're in Southgate, Michigan. We're right outside of Detroit, 18829 Eureka Road. And thanks for watching, guys, and look forward to the next video. Have a good one.